Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for joining us for one of our talks today. We're so thrilled today to be joined by the fantastic cast from Netflix's Pretty Smart. We have Emily Osment, Olivia Macklin, Gregg Sulkin, Cinthya Carmon, and Hsu Rosen. And Emily, I wanted to start with a question for you because you're playing a character who has been holding on to everything in her life so tightly, and so there's a lot of really great straight comedy that you get to play off of that, both in terms of her verbal dialogue and the physicality of how she even just like is literally holding her body and trying to retain that last element of control. And then you gradually kind of loosen it up a little bit episode by episode. And so I was interested in how you navigated finding that very specific style of comedy for your performance throughout the show, and then how you wanted to evolve it as your character does.
Oh, that's a really wonderful question. Well, I'll start off by saying no man is an island, so I could not do what we're doing on the show without obviously the rest of the people you're seeing here, but as well as our writers and our hair and makeup team and our wardrobe department. The minute from the minute you see Chelsea, she's a buttoned up, really stiff, college educated brainiac, and a lot of the way she carries herself is because she does have a lot of walls up. She is very reserved. She's only known one way her whole life, and that's the way that's comfortable for her. And luckily, throughout her living with her sister and these three new people in her life, she's able to loosen up at the seams slowly but surely over the first season, and hopefully many seasons after that. But yeah, she's definitely rigid. And as we know, your mid to late 20s, all your 20s are really terrifying. And you're at that point where she's going to turn 30 and I'm turning 30 next year. And it's just sort of like, is this where I want to be? Is this who I want to be? And I think it's a lovely juxtaposition against the rest of the people living in the house who seem like they are not together, but in reality they really are, because they know who they are, which is the most important overall.
Yeah. And then Olivia, your character comes from such a place of loyalty and love for everyone around her. But then there's moments where there's, both comedy and emotion in some of the scenes where she's trying to express that on both sides to her sister and to her roommates, particularly through that one really great
Yeah.
episode where her sister's, dealing with the breakup en masse. And so I was interested in how you
Right.
navigated that space of really playing her in that way, but also how you got to play around with both the comedic beats and the emotional beats that come with that, with so many scenes.
Absolutely. I think in that way I relate to Claire. I think that I like to make people happy and make people laugh. But when it comes down to something serious, like when one of my close friends is in pain, or, I've got a bunch of sisters myself and one of them really needs me, I can really snap into that kind of like mama bear mode. So that came pretty naturally. But I would say that again, like Emily said, it's the dynamics with the four people here, because with the other three, I think we have more of a natural comedic relationship and how we play together. And with Emily, it was just so easy to tap into this very like connected ground, because she's such an inherently grounded person. So being with her, feeling that energy, I just played off of that. It was really fun.
And then Cinthya, with your character being an emotional healer, she's obviously very in touch with her emotions, but that also transfers over into the way that she interacts with the other characters. The moment that Chelsea shows up, she physically picks her up and she's incredibly tactile. And so was it important to you that there be a lot of physical elements where she's very close to people in that way?
Absolutely. I mean, I think naturally I'm a very kind of just like affectionate person. And luckily this group embraced me in a way where I could just like hug them and bond with them in such a beautiful way. So we did a lot of that. I mean, piggybacking again on what Emily said, it was so important for each of our characters, mine specifically, to just have this organic chemistry, which, I don't know, I think the proof is in the pudding. We all were able to get along so well, and everybody just kind of let me energetically heal them in some way. And that helped the dynamic between us so much.
Yeah. And Greg, with your character, a lot of the comedy falls in the fact that it sometimes takes him a little beat to pick up on what's going on in a conversation. And there's times where he kind of pauses for a second before coming back with something, or there's times where he's still kind of going with the flow because he's coming back with something, even if it's a misdirect, like the entire conversation about a shed, where he's totally in the conversation, but just having a very different dialogue to the other characters. So did you find that balance between those two spaces gave you a lot of opportunity to really play around with the pacing and the rhythm and the beats of scenes based depending on where he was spaced in them?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first off, personally, I absolutely love multicam comedy. I've watched it growing up, and I just think it's such it's very special to me. And so when I got the opportunity to do the show, I was thrilled to take advantage of those moments, find those beats, and really enjoy the timing aspect of it. It does really help when you've got a very talented cast, because you literally play off of each other. I think obviously when you're on a single camera show, it's your coverage only. When you're on a multicam, it's always your coverage. And so, yeah, I absolutely, Grant is by far the most fun I've ever had with a character. He's so earnest, and just being able to tap into that just allows the comedy to flow. So for me, yeah, it definitely takes a beat to get his words out and also put a shirt on. So, overall, it was a fun season for me.
And Michael, there's a really wonderful episode later in the season for your character where he talks a lot about the challenges of existing, as a gay man in the world and having to exist in straight spaces every single day in life, and how a gay bar is really his safe space. And I thought that the episode really beautifully captured the emotion that comes with that within him as a character, and yet still kind of had the comedic beats that the rest of the series does. And so how did you really want to approach that specific episode and your character's journey in that moment in, making sure that you were going as far as you needed to into the emotional spaces while still retaining elements of comedy, because it can be such a challenge to balance both of those sides alongside each other?
Well, I think it really starts with the writing. Like we have such an incredible team of writers, Jack and Doug, our showrunners, but also just a room full of really smart, really funny people who are also very thoughtful about like what they put on the page. And I thank you very much, because I love that episode, and I'm glad that it sort of translates, because working with Olivia on those scenes was so fun, because they were kind of built exactly right. The way that they were written, it was sort of joke, and then it kind of you could break the tension with and then sit in something real. I think that the show does that a lot with the dynamic between the sisters, or like in that episode. And I just felt really supported. It was also nice that it was like you're in this bar, have all this crazy stuff, but then the wig comes off, we're in a bathroom, it's quiet, and it's just two people trying to relate to each other. And the show makes space for that a lot within the comedy. And I do, as a performer, it's so satisfying, because you get to kind of play all sorts of stuff. And even on the day, we had our director, Phil Lewis, he was so wonderful. He we did it 10 ways, we did it one very comedic, one very, very emotional. And then where we arrived, it's not surprising, it was somewhere in the middle. But on the day we were playing, the different colors. And yeah, I'm proud of what we came up with. I hope other people respond to it as well.
And then Olivia and Emily, I wanted to talk about your process and the way that the two of you really work together to shape that dynamic between your characters, because it's a really unique space in that you're playing sisters, but they've also been incredibly estranged for several years because of their parents' divorce, not growing up in the same household, and really having very little communication for several years. And so how did the two of you work together to really figure out not only what that backstory was, but how that was going to influence a lot of the dynamic, particularly in those early episodes where they're still kind of figuring out what their relationship is again?
Yeah, I think that was aided tenfold by Netflix's decision to have us shoot out of order. That really helped us gain some chemistry. We shot episode 3 first, and then we worked our way backwards to the pilot. And so by the time Olivia and I were working on the pilot, and we had actually spent physical time together for those few weeks, the first episode you see is us, familiar with each other, because we technically were. And I feel very lucky we got to do it that way, because a lot of shows, you start right from the pilot, you've known each other sometimes only 15 hours, and then you're shooting, and that can be really hard. And I really appreciated the time that we were allotted to get to know each other. And as you can, I'm sure, tell from just being around us now, we really, really like each other.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone has said, it's really in the writing. I think that they wrote a really honest relationship between two sisters who, from Claire's perspective, she just wants to love her so, so much. But she's dealing with someone who has been through a lot. I mean, their parents are separated. She's been working her whole life to prove that. I mean, from my perspective, I see Chelsea's really working hard to show I'm a hard worker. I'm an intelligent woman. I'm reliable. I'm strong. And I think with that, she's built up a bit of an armor. But she does, like Emily said, slowly start to unfurl as Claire kind of backs off a little bit and gives her the space to breathe. And it was really fun to do. It was just so much fun. And some of my most favorite moments of the show are when Emily and I got to really just sit together and realize, like, hey, I really love you and I've got you, because it's the best.
And Michael was mentioning some of the directing on the show, and I wanted to ask you all specifically about working with Pamela Fryman, who directed episodes 1, 2, and 3 at the beginning, because a lot of that journey at the beginning is very much about navigating and figuring out what's this dynamic between our characters going to be, what's the voice of the show going to be, what's the comedic timing that's really going to work for this going to be as well. And she comes from directing everything from Frasier to How I Met Your Mother and so many great comedy sitcoms. And so what were some of the moments where she really helped any of you in terms of finding aspects of your character or really helping you figure out what it was from your performance that was going to work so specifically for the show?
I'll just jump in there first. We all have wonderful things to say about Pam, so you'll hear it. I think for me, on a personal level, I think Pam has a sort of, she has a no ego, leave your ego at the door policy. And I think when we all jumped onto the show, Emily and I have been friends for many, many years, but the five of us at the end of the day, this is a new dynamic. And so her kindness and her warmth just allowed us all to connect on such a deep and collaborative sort of way and in such an amazing spirit that her and her expertise and her experience just allowed us all to sort of calm down, calm the nerves, and then enjoy and do what we actually love to do, and thankfully what we are all capable of doing. And so having her presence, aside from her directing ability, to me made such a difference, and why I think the five of us, when you watch the show, there is so much love there because it's genuine, and I think it stemmed from Pam.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with all of that. I think Pam is one of the most incredible women I've ever met. And this was my first multicam, and that was very intimidating. And in a lot of situations, someone would say they don't have time to nurture. They don't have time to care about how you're doing in the process. And that is just the complete opposite of Pam. She would call me and that wouldn't happen with other, in the past. It's so incredible that she would say, like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What do you need? Because when someone treats you with that level of respect for your mental health and a new process, it's just a giant exhale, and you just feel like you can do your best work. And that Pam does that for a newbie, and for a seasoned pro, she's worked with the best. But I think that she treats everyone the same, with the same level of respect and dignity. And that's really cool to see.
She also inspires such an incredible work ethic in her crew, because they respect her so much, because she leads with such kindness. And I think she's so reasonable, and her competence is so easily gleaned just from the way she moves about the world. She doesn't have to shove it in your face. She's not trying to tell you or prove to you that she knows better. She's just presenting good ideas all the time. And so everyone just sort of steps up to her level in a way where they're not intimidated. They're not, they're not cowering. They're not catering to her, like Gregg said, to her ego. It's to her ideas. And she was such an inspiration for me, and I know for all of us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
I mean, right, just even before, this is my first multicam, like Olivia had said, I'm in the same boat. And so I knew that I was working with a legend. I was just completely in awe of all of her work before meeting her. And what I love about her is that she's such a mama bear. I mean, she knows what she's doing. She's extremely talented and knowledgeable, but she also just knew how to nurture us and make us feel safe, me specifically. She had this wonderful balance of being this nurturer, being this mama bear, helping us set the tone, helping us, myself, really find this character, but also being really sharp with the technical things. She taught me things that I took with me for the rest of the season that I'm going to take on forever. And I'm really grateful to her for that. And I think we had so many incredible moments with her on set. I mean, just to think of one, I remember at the end of the season, we were doing some reshoots with her, and she just like pulled me aside in one of the rooms. I think it was Chelsea's room. And she was like, hey, you graduated, you did it. You belong here. This was special. You gave us something wonderful. And just to have someone like her just constantly reinforce you and just make you feel good and make you feel free and let you really live and play, which was so important for this show and for Solana. I mean, she's just a really, really special human being. I'm really grateful that we have her.
And Gregg was touching upon, how with multicam, it isn't just, you're filming your coverage every single moment. And there's so many fantastic ensemble scenes that you all get to do together throughout this show. I feel like every single episode has a whole handful of them. And so I was interested for all of you again in if that felt like there were a lot more opportunities, not just to explore those one-on-one dynamics within the group, but really to explore all the different facets of your character. Because for all of us, when you're friends with someone, they all bring out different sides in you, and you get to play all of that into these singular scenes. So how did that really help you to evolve the way in which you were exploring your characters through these ensemble scenes?
Those scenes are the best. And my favorite is when we would act almost like a team doing a relay race or something. Like we would all text before and like meet in someone's room to be like, let's talk about that. And like really like finesse it and be like, okay, so you're here and you're there and I need you for this. And that gives you such a rush and a thrill. It makes you feel like you're really a part of something.
Guys, I was never
I love the
invited
teamsmanship of
to
it.
those meetings.
Get out of here. I think
Emily, they were
in my room.
Yeah.
We should really talk about how.
But that was
Go ahead, Olivia.
Yeah. No,
I was just saying,
what are we going to talk about?
We should really talk about how Olivia's room was like our nucleus hub for everything. We had, or no, I'm sorry, Cynthia's room. Cynthia's room.
My room.
That was your room. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Olivia.
My room was the party room.
Party room, but also the Zen room, the place we all had lunch together. I think those
I napped in there.
We napped.
I would occasionally sage everyone's feet.
Yeah, we would sage our feet before we would go out. I mean,
That
I think
was really
ensemble stuff is really fun, but I believe sometimes it was our producer's least favorite because you can't wrangle us. We just want to hang out with each other.
Exactly. And you know what I loved? I love that, like, and it was so prominent with this group, but that we all had each other's backs. Yeah. And anytime, I mean, I can speak, for myself, like anytime I needed help or, a joke just wasn't landing for me or I didn't understand something like yoink, for example, guys. What was
or chandelier.
Oh my, I was saving that one. But it was just lovely that we'd all go out there, and we just had each other's backs and we'd make each other laugh, which in so many different ways. And like Solana's relationship to Claire is so different from Solana's, friendship to Grant and Jaden and Chelsea. And it's like just having that familial bond was so special in what it brought out in our performances. But at the end of the day, it was really just fun, just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, I want to congratulate all of you on such a fantastic first season. And to Emily's point, hopefully there's many, many more great seasons for you guys to explore all these wonderful dynamics together. Really appreciate it. And thanks so much.